Hello there guys, my name is Unstable Voltage and today I'm going to be doing a quick review of Civilization 6. I've got about 120 hours played into Civilization 6 between the release version and the pre-release press version, which even though had a few of the civilizations missing and only had one difficulty level, not really much changed between the press version and the release version. I've also got almost 400 hours on Civilization 5, actually over two accounts probably over 400 hours, and over 50 hours on Civilization Beyond Earth, which we don't really talk about. Either way, I think I've played enough Civilization to actually have a clue what I'm talking about. I can beat Civilization 5 on Deity, and after putting many hours into Civilization 6, getting a few wins under my belt, I think I've come to a few conclusions about the game and I'd like to share them with you. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cut straight to the chase and say that I actually think Civilization 6 is a really great game. I've enjoyed the time that I've been playing it. I'm definitely going to be playing it some more. I'm certainly not saying it's perfect. It definitely has some issues that need to be ironed out. They haven't really spoiled my enjoyment of the game so far, although they could certainly make things better if they just made a few tweaks here and there. So I'm going to be going through and sort of addressing what those issues are, and also pointing out a few other things as well that I like and don't like about Civilization 6 in comparison to its predecessors. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to speak about the elephant in the room, and this was one of the first things that people picked up on when the first screenshots for this game were released long before it came out. It's also one of the most discussed topics about the game on the Steam forums and the 2K forums, and that is the graphic style. Civilization 5 had a very sort of realistic, very authentic graphic style, and Civilization 6 went back to this more stylized, more vibrant, almost cartoony look. And that's certainly something that you can see if you go ahead and have a look at some of the in-game leaders. Some of them are not quite as bad as others, but some of them do look very cartoony. They are, you know, almost sort of caricatures, if you like. But it's not just the other nations' leaders. It's the entire map aesthetic itself. Now, what I will say is, from my personal opinion, I actually liked Civilization 5's graphics. I liked that realism. Does that mean that I dislike Civilization 6's graphics? No, absolutely not. I actually really like the graphics in Civilization 6. Yes, they are different. Yes, they are cartoony. But the original Civilization games all looked cartoony anyway. And I think a lot of it was backlash from people who saw the early screenshots and thought to themselves, oh, it looks like a mobile game. It's going to be sort of not a very good game. People were saying it's a step backwards, and it really isn't. I mean, everything is now rendered in 3D, and you can prove that by the fact that you can actually rotate the map around. And screenshots don't do this game justice. It isn't really until you actually get into the game and have a look around and look at some of the detail on these buildings. Everything is lovely, you know, lovely to look at. Everything is really well modeled. You can see those water mills on the end of the aqueduct there. You can see the cranes working on the mine on the hill. You can see the merry-go-rounds in the entertainment district there. And even just looking at how the light reflects off the surface of the river. You know, there's a lot of detail that goes into this game. And especially when you start getting in there and taking a look at things like the wonders. As you can see, we've got the Colosseum over there. You can see in my industrial districts, you can tell at a glance that I've got a power plant that's in there. If we go ahead and have a look at our space center here, you can see that we're actually starting to build a rocket. You can see it's starting to appear inside the hangar. And these buildings all actually evolve as the game goes on. As you actually start to go up through the eras, your mines and farms and buildings will change to look more modern. You can even tell the difference between a worked farm and an unworked farm. If I just go in here, just remove a worker from one of these farms, if I can. We've got a lot of people working farms. Let's just go ahead and put some people elsewhere if we can. Just want to try and get somebody out of a farm. We've got a lot of tiles to work here. I mean, no, maybe we've got a few people too many. And we can get a few people in there as well. I just want to sort of get some people out of a farm. Let me unwork a farm or two. There we go. So there's an unworked farm. So if we go ahead and look at that farm now, you can see that this farm looks all sort of just like brown dirt compared to these ones. So there is a lot of detail that has gone into the graphics. On top of that, the music as well, absolutely fantastic. New title theme by Christopher Tin, the same guy who did the title theme for Civilization 4, Baba Yetu. Absolutely fantastic. The music you can hear in the background, this is Brazil's theme, actually. But the game has a fantastic soundtrack. Each civilization has their own theme, and it's got 4 different evolutions. So it starts off with the ancient era, moves up through the medieval era into the industrial era, and then eventually the atomic era. So each nation's theme evolves as you go through the game, and that's something that I really, really like. Now, I did say that I did enjoy the game, but there are some problems, and I definitely need to highlight those. There are some mechanical changes to the game, which I believe are part of the issue. One of the issues that, well, mostly the issues come down to balance and poor AI, but I think they're caused by changes to the game's base mechanics. So, one of the first things that I'm going to point out is the movement mechanic, which has changed since Civilization 5, and it's the one thing that I actually dislike about Civilization 6. And what that is your ability to actually move into tiles that require extra movement. So if you on Civilization 5, for example, if we had a unit like this one, a unit that has 2 movement, if we were to move into an open tile that costs 1 movement, like that, we would then still have 1 movement left, which we do. Now, on Civilization 5, we'd be able to move into these woods, because even though woods have a movement cost of 2, as long as you've got 1 movement left, you can still move into them. But on Civilization 6, you actually need the full amount of movement to be able to move onto a tile. And because of this change in movement mechanics, it can actually take a lot longer to get units across the map. Now, as a player, I find this frustrating enough. It's almost like the maps have doubled in size, even though the maps haven't got any bigger. It just takes you twice as long to get from one side of the map to the other. You often end up with units sort of bottlenecking while you're trying to get them through the path of least resistance. The problem is the AI also seems to struggle with this new pathing. I'm not too sure whether they sort of copied some elements of the AI over from Civilization 5, but the AI really does seem to struggle when chasing units down and also running away. Now, one of the other big changes that they've made is unstacked cities. In Civilization 5, every single building that you built within a city was within the actual city centre itself, and the whole city was built on a single tile. You could improve tiles around the city using workers, but in Civilization 6, you actually have a new mechanic called districts. And you can see I have various districts around my city. So if we go ahead and here and look at my capital, some of these things around are improvements. So this thing here is a ziggurat, which is one of my unique improvements. We've also got a farm here on the rice paddy. We've got pastures. We've got a plantation here on the tea, which is a luxury resource. We've got a mine. We've got a lumber mill. We've got a farm. So the same sort of buildings, or same sort of tile improvements that you would see in Civilization 5. Now we've also got some districts. This is a holy district, a holy site. And this is where we can build our religious buildings. So as you can see, just by looking at it, you can already tell that we've got a shrine, a temple, and a pagoda. And all of these buildings appear dynamically as you build them. So if we had a holy site that did not have these buildings in, and I'm not sure that we do, because there's another holy site that has them all. Let's go ahead and look at Leventa's. We can see Leventa's holy site. Leventa has a shrine, but they've got no temple. They've got no pagoda. We can see that we've got, let's go back to the capital because that has the most. We can see that we've got our campus here. Our campus has a library and a university and a research lab. We can see all of those in there. We also have our theatre district here. We can see that the theatre district has the amphitheatre. It also has a museum in there. And we can tell that it's an archaeological museum because it actually has these little dinosaur skeletons there. We can also tell that it has a broadcast centre as well. There is the industrial district, which is the one over here. That has our factory in there, our workshop, our factory, and our power plant. We've got our space center district here, which is just used for the science victory, for building the spaceship parts. And there are a few other districts as well. You've got your entertainment district here. You can see that we've got things in here such as we've got the arena. We've also got a zoo in there as well. And we've got our stadium. So all of these districts you have to build in order to build the additional buildings that your city requires. Now, in Civilization 6, wonders are also built on the map as well. So as you can see over here, we have the Great Library. We've got the Colosseum over here as well. So wonders are no longer built within the city themselves. Wonders are actually built on a tile. And there are certain things that limit the placement of wonders and limit the placement of districts. So some of them are required to be built on a specific tile, like they may have to be built next to a workshop. If we take, for example, one wonder that I don't have because China beat me to it, there's one called Ruhr Valley. Ruhr Valley has to be built next to a workshop and next to a river. So it's very, very limited to the type of ground that it can go on. Now, you'll also find that with districts especially, they are limited by population. So you need a higher population in your city in order to build more districts. And they also get placement bonuses. So, for example, if you actually put a holy district next to a mountain, it'll gain 1 extra faith per turn for each mountain that is adjacent to it. Same with the campus. The campus will gain 1 extra science per turn for every adjacent mountain. Now, in Civilization 6, it's much better to go wide than it is to go tall. And what you end up finding is that if you just try and keep 1 or 2 cities, you'll not have anywhere near enough production to get everything done that you need. So you start going wide, and you end up having to build more districts. Now, in order to try and stop the player going wide, they have to implement some sort of mechanic. In Civilization 5, it was an increase in cost of your technologies and your social policies. So each additional city increased the cost of those things. Not to mention, the more cities you had, the more global unhappiness you would get. So you had to constantly try and balance that out. In Civilization 6, there isn't really a global happiness, although the new mechanic does have some similarities. But you also don't get an increase in cost to your science and your civics, which are the replacement for social policies. What you do have is an increasing cost for your settlers, but also every time you build a district, it increases the build cost of every other district in your empire. And districts cannot be bought for cash, you have to hard build them. So the wider your empire gets, the more districts you have, the longer it's going to take to build more districts. And this means that during the late game, settling new cities becomes almost impossible because you put a city down, the city is pretty useless without having any districts to put buildings in, and those districts might take 60 turns to build. So I think that's something that needs adjusting slightly. I think the scale of build time, the scale of production cost on districts as it goes up, I do think that needs to be reduced slightly. And this is also an issue that does seem to be affecting the AI, because I've seen AIs with some cities really late in the game, even if you go and look at some AI's capital cities, who have little to no even basic districts. We look at China's capital here, they actually do have most of their districts here. They've got the campus, they've got the industrial zone, they've got a holy site, they've got the Ruhr Valley, which is the wonder I was mentioning before, which requires it to be next to an industrial zone and adjacent to a river, which indeed it is. But you will find that the AI often fails to build even some of the most basic districts, and even when it does build them, it doesn't always put them in the best places to get the bonuses. I have seen AIs who have been in a city close to a load of mountains, and they'll build their campus or they'll build their holy site on the opposite side away from the mountains and not get the bonuses. So it does seem like the AI struggles a little bit to actually understand the district placement. Now, the AI issues are a reoccurring theme in this game. Much like Civilization 5, as you increase the difficulties, the AI doesn't really get any smarter, it just gets additional bonuses, and the player gets additional handicaps. Handicaps usually come in the form of the fact that higher level AIs get a combat bonus, so like-for-like units fighting each other, the AI is going to have an advantage. But also, as you go up through the difficulty levels, the AI gets advantages to production and science output. It will also start with additional units, including extra settlers. Now, what I have found with this game is that playing it on Prince and even on King, it does seem to be quite easy. This is a game that I was playing through on King, didn't really have any problems with it at all. I definitely need to go up a difficulty level, and I can beat Civilization 5 on deity, but I certainly wasn't playing this game of Civilization 6 optimally. I was making a lot of mistakes and experimenting with a lot of stuff, and even then, I was still able to pretty much stomp across the AI. Now, a few other changes have made life a little bit difficult. So, for example, the barbarians in Civilization 6 are a lot more aggressive and respawn a lot more often than they did in Civilization 5. And certainly at the start of the game, your cities don't have any ability to defend themselves. And if you're playing on a higher difficulty level, it's very, very easy at the beginning of the game to lose your capital city or any of your cities to barbarians or another AI, which you will usually start quite close to. And if you're playing on a higher difficulty level, they will declare war on you nice and early on. And it's very, very difficult as the player, because you only start with a single city and fairly low production. It's very, very difficult to actually get out a defensive army early on in the game, because you're also trying to build scouts and monuments and granaries and various other buildings and units and districts that you need to get started. But at the same time, you're kind of being gimped by the fact that you actually need to get a little defensive army out. Now, if you don't get a defensive army out, it's very, very easy for barbarians or another civilization to come along and capture your cities within the first 30 turns or so. And in Civilization 6, raising cities is now instant. So if a barbarian captures one of your cities, that's it, it's gone. There's no getting it back. They're going to instantly raise that down. The problem is, once you actually get past those early stages of the game and you have got a little bit of an army and your cities do have their defences, then even on the higher difficulties, it's still fairly easy to stomp the AI. It's only really tricky at the beginning, and again, I think that's another balance issue that needs to be addressed. They need to do something to make it so that if you increase the difficulty, you're not just going to get face stomped in the first 30 turns, but then the game's not going to be an absolute cakewalk in the remaining game. So that's another thing that they do need to deal with. As usual, the AI seems pretty bad at combat, but what makes it even worse is it seems terrible at upgrading its units. And again, I think that is also caused by another change in mechanics. Now, first of all, I'd like to say that in all the games I've played, I haven't actually seen an AI civilization take another city from another AI. That's not true, actually. I've seen it a couple of times, but it happens very, very rarely. In most games, it doesn't happen. I've seen the AI civs take out city-states quite regularly, but considering I see AI civs declaring war on each other very often, the chances of them actually taking a city from each other are always very, very low indeed. But the big problem is the AI failing to upgrade its units, and that's the reason why I have Rome over here, because Rome were really, really easy to take out. And the problem is the change to strategic resources. So in Civilization 5 you needed a strategic resource in order to build certain types of units, and each additional one of those units you wanted to build, you would require an extra copy of that resource. That's now changed in Civilization 6, and you only require 2 of one strategic resource in order to build as many of the units of that type as you want. So for example, if I wanted to build swordsmen, I require iron, but I only need 2 iron and I could build 100 swordsmen. If I have the appropriate district, which is the encampment district, you can see right here, if I actually had an encampment district, I only need 1 iron. So because they've actually reduced the amount of strategic resources that are required, you'll actually find that most of the strategic resources, well actually all of the strategic resources, only give you 1 copy. So this iron down here is only a single iron. Now the problem with that is they've also reduced the number of spawns across the map. If I zoom right out and you actually look for sources of iron, on this entire island here there's 1 source of iron down there, there's a second source of iron just here, and that's about it. If we also look for niter, which is this symbol here, niter is what is used for your gunpowder units, such as muskets for example, we've got 1 copy of niter just there, and that's pretty much it on the entire island. We've got a couple of sources of coal. There's 1 there. I did see another one around. There's another coal there. And aluminium tends to spawn quite frequently and close to each other. But the point is the strategic resources are few and far between. And what you often end up with is the AI will be lacking a strategic resource and therefore completely unable to upgrade its units. And because the AIs and the players don't have multiple copies of strategic resources anymore, they're very unwilling to trade them away. And this can be quite noticeable with some civilizations. I mean, if you look at the era that I'm in here, I am running around with machine guns. I think I'm actually at a point where I could possibly get... yeah, we can get helicopters, I can build jet fighters, I can build modern armor. So I'm in a very sort of advanced state of the game. If we go ahead and have a look at some of the other civilizations, look at Spain here. Spain is running around with conquistadors and catapults. China's doing better. China does have mechanized infantry and rocket artillery and modern armor and stuff like that. Germany's not doing too bad either, but you'll notice that those are civilizations that have actually gone quite wide. So therefore they've managed to snag quite a lot of the strategic resources. But then if you go ahead and look at city-states are still using crossbows and catapults and warriors and things like that. So this change to the way strategic resources works is really gimping the AI. And I've come across a lot of combat situations where I've just been attacking crossbowmen and archers with machine guns, infantry and tanks. So that's definitely something that needs to be sorted out. They either need to make the strategic resources more plentiful or just remove the restriction that stops the AI from being able to build the better units without having the strategic resource, because it's really, really gimping the AI's ability to effectively mount any sort of combat against the player. And this is why I was saying, if you can survive that early onslaught, because at the beginning of the game you have the same type of units that the AI does. But as you go through to the late game, you will soon progress through the tech. You will have better units than the AI at almost every occasion. Speaking of tech, I think this is something else that needs balancing out. There's technically 2 tech trees now in Civilization 6. You've got your technology tree, as before, but you've also got your civics tree, which kind of replaces social policies and unlocks various things as you go through the game. Now, what I have found is that even if you're playing suboptimally, like I have been doing through this entire campaign, it's very, very easy to get to the end of the tech tree and the civics tree before the game is anywhere near finished. This is a standard pace game, which is 500 turns. I am on turn 406. I've already completely researched everything in the tech tree, and I've already researched future tech a couple of times over. The civics tree, I've got a couple of bits and pieces in there that I haven't quite filled in yet, but most of this is stuff that you don't need. A lot of these things are sort of choices. So it's like if you pick one, you don't necessarily need the other. You can still go ahead and unlock them all, of course, but you don't need to unlock a lot of these things. And I find that a little bit disappointing. Like I said, playing suboptimally, and I still managed to get to the end of the tech tree. In all of the games of Civilization 5 that I've completed, I've not really been anywhere near the end of the tech tree by the time the game has been over. So I do think that that is something that needs changing. And there are a few other nice little changes to the game. I mean, there have been a change to the victory conditions. I really have to mention that. So you've still got a lot of the same victories that you had before. Domination victory pretty much works exactly the same way as it did in Civilization 5. You've got the culture victory, which has had some slight changes to its mechanics, but still essentially works in the same way. And what that basically is, I've never noticed these before. I wonder if this is something new. I hadn't actually noticed this showing what tourism is being generated. But basically, the more tourism you generate, the better. You have to generate more tourism than your opponents can generate culture. And that's the basic way of looking at it, and you can win a cultural victory. Science victory, you have to build and launch various spacecraft. Unfortunately, because the tech is so easy to get now, it's actually more of a production victory than a science victory. It's very, very easy to unlock all the required techs, but actually having enough production to be able to build all of the units you want, or all of the spacecraft, actually takes quite some time. Especially now they've also overhauled the espionage system, so you can actually send spies to other cities to try and sabotage their production and even sabotage their construction of the spacecraft, which slows things down, which is nice. Civilization 5 was missing an ability to actually stop somebody getting a spaceship victory without actually directly going to war with them. But one of the biggest changes is the religions victory. So they've actually gone ahead now and gotten rid of the a diplomatic victory from Civilization 5, which was never really a diplomatic victory. It was more of a gold victory. He who had the most gold could just bribe all the city-states and win that victory type. But basically now, if you have the dominant religion with all of the other civilizations, dominant religion means that 50% or more of their cities follow your religion, then you get a religious victory. And what they've basically done now is they've given you a couple of new unit types where you've still got missionaries, you've still got inquisitors, but you've also got apostles. And your religious units can actually fight each other. And you don't have to be at war to fight somebody else's religious units with your religious units. And if you kill a religious unit in combat, you actually do a massive spread of your religion to all the cities within 10 tile radius. And all of the cities within that radius take a negative hit to the other person's religion. Quite an interesting new mechanic. I actually really like that change. It's something a little bit new, a little bit fresh. It gives you a way to try and deal with religious victories without actually having to directly go to war. So I think there are a lot more opportunities for passive players who don't necessarily enjoy combat to have a good time with Civilization 6. However, at the same time, if you do like going to war, and you're the sort of person that likes to play domination, you're probably going to find it quite easy because of the reasons that I mentioned before. A few other changes in there, like changes to the way great people are generated. So a lot of the great people now are all unique. So great engineers, for example, each different great engineer will offer a slightly different bonus or ability. So you now have to think carefully about where you're going to spend your resources and which great people you want to get. I don't really want to spend too much time in this video actually going through individual mechanics and differences. There is another video on the channel where I specifically talk about the differences between Civilization 5 and Civilization 6. That video is about an hour long, so as you can imagine there's quite a lot in there to cover. But this just is intended to be a review. So what I'd certainly say about this game is, yes, I really have enjoyed it. I do think it is one of the best Civilization games to date. Unlike Civilization 5, which did need a couple of expansions before it really felt like it was complete, Civilization 6 feels like it is already there. It doesn't feel like there's anything missing mechanically, but it does feel like it needs a patch or two to sort out some of the issues with the AI and some of the balance issues. Now, one other slight problem that I do have with Civilization 6, which isn't a deal breaker for me, but some people will find it a little bit annoying, and that is the game's lack of information. And I find this quite strange that they've almost taken a step back on certain things, considering in other areas they've made improvements. For example, they've added all these lenses, which are basically map modes that allow you to look at the game map and be able to see different things at a glance. Now, I'm not going to go through and explain what all of these different things represent here, but just the fact that you can actually go through and spot different things on the map is a really, really nice addition. They've also added these map pins that allow you to basically place pins down on a map and give them a name and give them an icon, which is fantastic if you're trying to plan out in advance where you want to put your districts and your wonders and your cities. You can go ahead and mark these things on the map so you won't forget where you left them. Some things are a really nice idea. But at the same time, the game also misses some really basic UI features. For example, there's no sort of combat log or log. So if you actually get attacked at the end of your turn, it's often very difficult to tell where that attack has come from. And there's no way to really go and see what happened unless you lose a unit. If you lose a unit, you do get the notification here on the right-hand side. But anything else that goes on, you don't really see what happened. Another issue that I've noticed is when you go into a city, if a city completes its previous building, it doesn't always necessarily show you what the last building was. Sometimes it gets it wrong. Another thing that's missing here is the ability to queue up buildings. And this is something that I find really, really strange. I've also just noticed this, though. Because in Civilization 6 you do have the ability to stack units together. So you can stack 2 units of the same type to make a corps, or 3 units of the same type to make an army. And I've just realised that you can actually just hard build them that way. Never noticed that before. Not too sure if that's something that's been added recently. I've just not spotted it. But there's certainly no build queue, so you can't actually queue a city up to build several different units or several different buildings. You have to micromanage it on each turn. So I'm very surprised that that is missing as well. You do have a system called the gossip system, where you have you will find information out about other civilizations. As you can see, there's all this gossip in here, and this gossip every turn will pop up. Actually, if I just go and hit next turn, you should see. So when you hit next turn, you'll start to get these gossip things. Here we go, they're starting to appear now. So these give you little bits of gossip that tell you what other civilizations are doing. Now sometimes this gets quite spammy and fills up almost the entire screen. Here we go, it's starting to do it now. And it can quite often, when you get a lot of them, be difficult to read them all. And once they've gone off the screen, the only way to find them is to actually go to the individual civilizations that they refer to and read the gossip over here. And if you can't remember what the gossip was, it's difficult to know who it was talking about. Again, some sort of log that lists everything that happened on the last turn would be a really nice thing to have. Pop-ups also get quite annoying as well, but that is something that I can deal with. So I do find it surprising in a game that has added such cool things as the ability to see different map lenses, and even the strategic view looks absolutely beautiful compared to Civilization 5. It's really easy to see at a glance exactly what is going on here. So I find it really surprising when they've put that much attention to detail that they miss out something as simple as a build queue. I also find dealing with the cities themselves quite clunky. So you click on a city. If you click on this button here on the left hand side, this gives you a list of bits and pieces about your city, but it's often difficult to tell exactly what you're getting. For example, if we go ahead and look at our wonders here, I can see that my Colosseum is giving me +2 culture, but it's certainly not telling me about its other bonuses. For example, the Colosseum gives amenities, which is what is used to offset unhappiness. So amenities give more happiness, but it doesn't tell me anywhere here that the Colosseum is actually giving me those amenities. Now, you gain amenities from connecting luxury resources or improving luxury resources in your civilization, and each luxury resources gives one amenity to 4 different cities. Now, those amenities are distributed automatically by the computer. There's no way for you to manually assign where they go, and there isn't even really a way for you to actually see where they're being distributed, and sometimes this can make it quite difficult trying to manage your empire's happiness. Again, something else that I would like to see. We can clearly see strategic resources at a glance here at the top of the screen. We have to go into this view reports button to see all of our luxury resources. But again, the icons are very, very small. This list is quite sort of messy and unruly. It makes it a little bit difficult to actually go through and see at a glance exactly what you have. That is something that I don't particularly like, although these reports weren't here at all in the press version, so I am glad that they added that in. But once again, I do think that there are a few oversights with feedback for the player. Now, these things can be fixed with mods. Obviously, the game is quite moddable, but these are things that should be in the base game. It shouldn't be reliant on the modders actually going in and doing bits and pieces that should have been in there from day one. So if you find that these things might bother you, you might want to wait for a patch to come out for this game. I'm sure there will be one sooner or later that will allow them to go ahead and fix those things. But again, I do have to reiterate, I've had a really good time playing Civilization 6. I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm going to keep going up through the difficulty levels and hopefully find a sort of a balance where it's not impossible at the beginning and where it's not too difficult. It's not too easy towards the end. And I am still waiting for a patch. I do want them to fix these certain things. But like I said, it's been a great opportunity to just mess around, try out new things, try new tactics. Because if you have played Civilization 5, you are going to have to get rid of a few bad habits and adapt your play style to actually make Civilization 6 work. But I do think that Civ 6 is an absolutely fantastic addition to the Civilization franchise, and if you're a big Civ fanatic, then I think that you will absolutely love this game. So I've been Unstable Voltage. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this review. If you do want to see more about this game, there's several other videos on the channel, including quite a few playthroughs of both the press release and the retail release, as well as my hour-long video on the changes between Civilization 5 and Civilization 6. So I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye for now.